The twin suns of Nexus Prime blazed high above the sprawling marketplace of Port Valerian, their combined heat baking the dusty streets and leaving most travelers drenched in sweat by midday. Dominic Reed, a major in the Terran Expeditionary Force, was no exception. He felt every bead of perspiration trickle down his neck beneath the collar of his worn black combat uniform. He was on shore leave, a short respite after a grueling deployment, and had come to Port Valerian solely because someone told him it was lively. Evidently, lively was a polite euphemism for chaos. Everywhere he turned, the hiss and chatter of dozens of alien tongues mingled with the smell of exotic spices, engine grease, and ozone from energy weapons. Vendors hawked all manner of goods, from dried Kreka meat to refurbished plasma cannons. Passing under a series of colorful tarps that provided slight relief from the sun's glare, he muttered curses at the steep prices and the dust clinging to his boots. He had no intention of causing trouble. After 6 months of raids and patrols against pirates on the rim, he wanted nothing more than a few stiff drinks and maybe a comfortable bed. Yet experience had taught him that trouble always found him when he least expected it. Port Valerian was a convergent point for rogue traders, mercenaries, thrill-seekers, and fugitives from every corner of the galaxy. It was a miracle that humans even had a toehold on this planet. Then again, the Terran Expeditionary Force specialized in establishing tenuous footholds, forging alliances, and, when necessary, neutralizing threats. Dom had done his fair share of neutralizing. As he wound his way toward a cramped stall that advertised rare earth whiskey, he heard a whirring noise overhead, a hover cart piled high with stacked cargo containers. The alien driver, a lanky, yellow-skinned creature with spindly limbs and wide, reflective eyes, was clearly in a hurry, zipping around corners and weaving between pedestrians who scrambled to get out of the way. Dom paused to observe, half expecting a collision. Sure enough, one of the precariously balanced containers on the cart's rear wobbled so violently that it broke free of its worn restraints. With a clang and a metal-on-metal screech, the cylindrical container hurtled off the back of the cart and tumbled down the street. "Hey!" Dom yelled on instinct, dashing forward. "You dropped something." But the alien driver sped around a corner without so much as looking back. The container rolled to a stop dangerously close to a kiosk selling cheap imitation relics. A few curious onlookers gathered, but no one dared to approach. Lost cargo in Port Valerian could mean anything: toxic waste, contraband weapons, or something far deadlier. Dom slowed as he neared the container, scanning the crowd. No one stepped forward to claim it, and the only face not turning away was that of an elderly reptilian vendor who hissed at him to go away. The container itself was around 2 meters in length, sleek and silver, with alien etchings winding around its surface in tight spirals. Suddenly it shifted. Dom froze, watching the cylinder jerk and shudder as though something inside was trying to break free. Caution warred with his conscience. His training urged him to leave it alone. But something about the frantic movement from within set his nerves on edge. A muffled sound, almost like a whimper, reached his ears. He knelt and inspected a latch near the top. It looked like a simple mechanism, albeit alien in design. Around him, people continued their business, pretending not to notice. Port Valerian's cardinal rule was not to get involved unless there was profit in it. Dom pressed his lips together, ignoring the voice in his head that told him to walk away. He popped the latch. With a hiss of escaping air, the lid slid open to reveal a cramped interior. Inside was a girl, or at least she resembled a girl at first glance. Her skin was a pale shade of lilac, her hair an otherworldly white that fell across her shoulders in unkempt tangles. She wore only a ragged, thin shift that covered her slender figure. Black metal bands encircled her wrists and ankles, glowing faintly with ribbons of purple energy. For a moment, Dom was so stunned that he couldn't speak. The girl squinted at the sudden flood of light, then locked eyes with him. Her irises were violet, swirling with intensity like miniature auroras. Dom recognized raw fear in them, along with a pleading he couldn't ignore. He reached a hand toward her. "Hey, Are you? She shrank back, babbling in a language that rang like wind chimes. He couldn't understand a word, but her tone was enough to convey desperation. Before Dom could gather his wits, a heavy hand clamped on his shoulder. He spun, instinctively reaching for the pistol at his hip, and found himself facing a hulking mercenary with scaly skin and reptilian eyes. Two more stood behind, an assortment of patchwork armor and scarred faces that advertised more fights than Dom cared to imagine. The largest one spoke, bearing rows of sharp teeth. You're meddling with valuable property, human. The mercenary's accent was guttural, weighted by a menacing hiss. Dom took a step back, refusing to be crowded. She doesn't look like property to me. The mercenary leader chuckled darkly. She's a Lazerian, specialized breed. Pleasure model. High-end product, worth more than you'll see in a lifetime. Now move. He gestured for Dom to step aside, and the other two mercenaries spread out, forming a small semicircle. Dom glanced back at the container. The girl was watching him, trembling. Something in her gaze twisted his gut. He felt a surge of anger at the notion of a living being treated as merchandise. She's not merchandise, Dom said, his voice steady. A flash of annoyance crossed the reptilian mercenary's features. Don't be stupid. Walk away before we make you regret it. Dom's right hand settled on the grip of his sidearm. I can't do that. All around them, onlookers realized that a fight was inevitable and scattered for cover. The street suddenly felt empty. The reptilian mercenary snorted. You've got guts, human, but we've got guns. In a single movement, the mercenary leader reached for a disruptor pistol at his belt. Dom reacted faster, slamming a boot into the creature's knee, forcing him to stagger. The mercenary howled in pain. The second mercenary, a wiry figure with mottled green skin, lunged forward. Dom ducked low, hooking an arm around the attacker's waist and flipping him onto the dusty ground. A third adversary fired a shot that seared the air near Dom's shoulder, but missed. Dom hissed in frustration. He needed to end this quickly. He pivoted, grabbed the girl under her arm, and pulled her out of the container. She stumbled, the energy tethers around her ankles restricting her steps, but adrenaline fueled her enough to keep pace. Together, they ran down the sandy street, weaving between stalls and ducking under tarps. Behind them, shouts and weapons fire erupted. The entire marketplace descended into chaos as people rushed to get out of the crossfire. Dom led her through a narrow alley, overturning crates and barrels to slow pursuit. He pressed himself against a wall, breathing heavily, while the girl clung to him for balance. She stared at him with those violet eyes, attempting again to speak in her musical tongue. He shook his head, wishing he had some sort of universal translator. I don't understand, he whispered, but we've got to move. The sounds of pursuit echoed from the marketplace entrance. Dom scanned the alley and saw a ladder leading up the side of a building. He pointed. Come on. The girl hesitated, still limited by her ankle restraints. Dom frowned. He drew his combat knife and carefully sliced into the energy tether that connected her ankles. There was a crackle of electricity, a spark, and then the tether dissolved. She let out a tiny gasp of relief. Dom placed the knife back in its sheath and gave her a determined look. Now we climb. He reached the ladder first, testing it. It seemed sturdy enough. She followed close behind, surprisingly agile despite whatever ordeal she had endured. They emerged onto a flat rooftop strewn with loose cables and broken solar panels. The twin suns cast everything in a harsh, pale light. From up here, Dom could see the chaotic sprawl of Port Valerian. Twisting streets, piled-on architecture, stalls that formed a maze at ground level. The girl tapped his arm, pointing toward a distant structure topped by a distinctive dome. She spoke a few more words in her language, then tapped her head. Dom gathered she might know a route or recognized a building as a landmark. Although they couldn't speak properly, he nodded. Sure, lead the way. They jumped from one rooftop to the next, the heat radiating off the metal like a furnace. Dom kept scanning for signs of their pursuers. Mercenaries usually had trackers, and if someone was willing to pay a high price for this girl, they wouldn't give up easily. He caught glimpses of men in the streets below, brandishing rifles as they questioned bystanders or rummaged through stalls. After nearly half an hour of climbing and leaping, they found a place to rest behind a ventilation unit, sheltered from prying eyes. Dom took a moment to gather his thoughts. He reached for the small translator app on his wrist computer and tried to see if her language matched any known dialect in the database. The device hummed and blinked. She seemed to understand what he was doing because she spoke a soft sentence. The app struggled, spitting out garbled nonsense. He sighed. She tried again, slowly, carefully pronouncing words. The translator managed a few partial phrases: danger, thank you, and something that might have been help me. Dom nodded. I get it. We're in danger. But you're safe with me. I'll help you. His words were meaningless to her, so he placed a hand over his chest and nodded, hoping she would sense his sincerity. She mirrored his gesture, a tentative smile crossing her face. Then, as if she decided it was worth a chance, she placed her fingertips lightly against his temple. A strange warmth coursed through him, and suddenly, a flurry of images invaded his mind. A planet with silver forests under violet skies, an image of metallic labs, uniformed guards, and the claustrophobic sensation of being locked in a container. The mental intrusion vanished as quickly as it began, leaving Dom gasping, heart hammering in his chest. She withdrew her hand, eyes brimming with concern. He tried to speak, but found his throat dry. Telepathic, he managed. She tilted her head, as if trying to guess if she'd heard him. He coughed and nodded slightly to show he was all right. Okay, he rasped. We have to stay hidden. Let's find somewhere safer. They pressed on, hopping a few more rooftops until the girl guided him down a service ladder, leading to a deserted courtyard behind a row of shuttered shops. Together, they crept through a series of alleys until they reached a run-down lodging house that Dom had used during a past visit. It wasn't luxurious, but it was cheap and rarely asked questions. The proprietor, an elderly creature covered in chitinous plates, gave Dom a suspicious once-over, but accepted his credits. Without a word, Dom escorted the girl upstairs to a small, dingy room with a single bed and a battered table. He locked the door behind them, then placed a chair under the doorknob as an extra measure. The battered air cooler in the corner rattled to life, providing minimal relief from the oppressive heat. The girl, exhausted, sank onto the edge of the bed. Her wrists were still bound by the black energy bands, though the tether was cut. Dom knelt to examine them, shining the small light on his wrist computer. Microscopic circuits glowed just beneath the surface. No visible key or lock. Advanced tech, he murmured, more to himself than to her. Might be biometrically sealed to whoever put them on you. Her eyes reflected anxiety. Dom glanced at his sidearm and considered. Shooting the bands off seemed unwise. With a sigh, he rummaged through his small kit of multi-tools, hoping to find something that could short-circuit the device. As he worked, she watched him in silence, occasionally wincing when the tools pressed too hard against the bands. After several tense minutes, a spark crackled along the metal, and the device clicked open, falling to the bed. Her gasp of relief was audible. She rubbed her wrists, thin red lines marking where the restraint had chafed her skin. Dom lifted the second band, repeating the process more efficiently now that he knew where the access point was hidden. A second click, and her ankles were free as well. She spoke in her gentle, chiming language. He caught the translator on his wrist, flipping through possible lexical matches and picking out words: gratitude, freedom, sorrow, home. Dom turned to her. I wish I could talk to you. Really talk. But maybe you can do that mental thing again. He touched his temple. She nodded, seemingly emboldened by her new freedom. Placing her hands gently on either side of his face, she closed her eyes. This time, the telepathic connection was more controlled. He felt a delicate stirring in his thoughts, as if a soft breeze was passing through his memories. Flashes of her world appeared again. The silver trees, the purple sky, a grand city with spires of glowing crystal. He understood she came from a place of beauty, a culture deeply connected through mind-sharing. He also saw glimpses of her capture, men wearing insignias that resembled a stylized D, a corporate crest he recalled hearing rumors about. Driak Enterprises, a weapons manufacturer involved in unsavory deals. They had discovered her telepathic race and realized that Lycerians were prize slaves, used for pleasure or sometimes as living tools in espionage. Dom's own memories seeped through, too. His childhood on a Terran colony, his enrollment in the military, the ravages of war against pirates. He tried to hold back some private thoughts, but telepathy was difficult to compartmentalize. Her presence in his mind felt warm, seeking not to harm, but to understand. He sensed her relief at his empathy, her gratitude that he had freed her, and a flicker of new hope that maybe he could help her get home. Then she withdrew from his mind, and he staggered, needing to brace himself against the table. She whispered a word in her language, something that translator device approximated as Lisa. He realized that was her name. Lisa, he repeated, pointing at her. She nodded, a shy smile appearing. Then he placed his hand on his chest. Dominic. Dom. She said his name clumsily, but it was enough. It felt like the first real step in communication. A sudden chime from his wrist computer broke. The moment. Dom glanced at it and saw an encrypted message from an old contact in the Terran Expeditionary Force, Commander Tessa Harlow. The text read, "Heard you stirred up trouble in Port Valerian. Driak's got a bounty on a Lycerian female, paying big. They're locking down exits. Get off planet ASAP, or you'll both be dead by morning." Dom exhaled, sinking onto the chair. Lisa, who was still perched on the bed, watched him intently, picking up on his concern. He looked up at her eyes. "We have to leave," he said, though he doubted she understood the words. Still, she must have gleaned his intention telepathically, because she nodded, her expression grim. He typed a response, "Need extraction. Where can we rendezvous?" But he got no immediate reply. His mind spun with possible escape routes. The starport was the obvious choice, but if Driak had the local authorities in their pocket, it would be heavily guarded. Another option was to bribe a smuggler, but that required connections Dom didn't have. Hiding was temporary at best. He considered contacting some of the local undercity gangs, though that carried its own risks. Eventually, hunger drove them downstairs, where Dom purchased some questionable rations with his dwindling credits. He and Lisa shared a meal in the corner of the lodging house's small common area, which was deserted except for a drunken reptilian in the far corner. The rations were bland and rubbery, but Lisa ate gratefully, as though she hadn't tasted food in days. Dom tried to remain alert for eavesdroppers. If word spread that a human was traveling with a violet-skinned woman wearing tattered clothes, they'd be in trouble. Later, they retreated upstairs. Dom kept watch by the window, scanning the alley through a gap in the warm blinds. Outside, the night was cooler but still thick with tension. He could sense the watchers, the mercenaries drifting through the area. A hush had fallen over Port Valerian, broken only by the distant hum of hover cycles or the occasional shout of a drunk. Lisa approached him silently, so silently that he almost jumped when he felt her hand on his arm. She pointed to his wrist computer, then tapped her temple, indicating she wished to communicate more effectively. Dom brought up a rudimentary translator function that could theoretically convert telepathic signals into textual readouts, but it was experimental software that the Terran military had tested only on simpler telepathic species. He tapped a few commands, uncertain if it would work at all with a Lycerian. She closed her eyes, focusing. A faint glow, like a swirl of violet energy, flickered around her. The wrist computer beeped, lines of half-legible text scrolling across the screen. Need. Safe place. Danger. Thank you. Help me find home. The broken syntax was enough to confirm the gist of her message. He typed a response. I'll help. But we need a ship. The translator displayed. Agree. Must leave soon. People want me. The sense of urgency was clear. They both startled at the sound of footsteps in the corridor. Someone rattled the door handle. Dom sprang into a crouch, sidearm drawn. Lisa pressed herself against the wall, the glow around her fading as fear replaced her concentration. The handle jiggled, but the makeshift barricade of the chair jammed it. For a tense moment, Dom expected it to burst open. Then the sound receded. Footsteps retreated down the hall. Dom let out a silent breath of relief. Lisa sagged with exhaustion. She attempted a faint smile, though it was tinged with worry. She spoke something in her language, gently, and the translation scrolled. "Close call. Must leave this place." Dom nodded. "We leave at first light," he whispered. Then, noticing her fatigue, he gestured for her to take the bed. "Sleep. I'll keep watch." She hesitated, then approached him with hesitant steps, placing a hand on his chest again as though wanting to impart her thanks. The translator sputtered in partial phrases, "Grateful, trust, bond." Something about the last word made Dom feel a flutter in his chest. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to remain focused. She needed rest more than anything else. She lay down, curling up under the threadbare blanket, and he returned to his vigil by the window. Night passed slowly. Dom dozed in and out of light sleep, always alert for the faintest sound of trouble. Twice, he heard muffled voices outside, but no one tried the door again. At some point, near dawn, his wrist computer pinged with a new message from Commander Harlow. "Got you a way out. Docking Base 17 at sunrise. Security might be heavy. Driak won't give up. Good luck." Dom carefully jostled Lisa awake. She blinked, looking around anxiously, until his presence calmed her. He showed her the message, pointed at the text, then mimed flying away. She nodded vigorously, hair falling into her face. He stuffed what little gear he had into a small pack, checked a sidearm, then helped Lisa to her feet. They slipped out the door, hearts pounding, and descended the rickety staircase. The proprietor was nowhere to be seen. Outside, the cool dawn air felt almost refreshing. The sky glowed in soft purple and orange hues, the sun's not yet fully risen. The streets seemed calmer now, though shadowy figures lingered in corners, no doubt some belonging to the local crime rings. Dom led Lisa through side alleys, recalling routes from his earlier visits. He wanted to avoid main thoroughfares where corporate security or mercenaries might stand guard. Here and there, they saw flickers of life. A stall owner setting up for the morning rush, an automated sweeper drone humming across the dusty street. But for the most part, Port Valerian dozed, bracing for the chaos that would awaken with the suns. As they neared a junction, Dom heard the unmistakable whine of a hoverbike engine. He quickly pulled Lisa behind a stack of crates. A pair of mercenaries cruised by, scanning the area with handheld detectors. Dom froze, holding his breath, his heart hammering so loudly he feared they would hear it. Lisa closed her eyes in concentration, perhaps using her mental talents to cloak their presence. The hoverbike slowed, its searchlight panning across the crates. Then, as though they had decided it was nothing, they accelerated away. Once the coast was clear, Dom and Lisa resumed their journey. Tension hummed between them, an unspoken awareness that at any second, the entire plan could collapse if Driak's forces discovered their location. Finally, the silhouette of the spaceport's tall spires came into view. Docking Base 17 was near the northeastern quadrant, a place Dom remembered as a private commercial hub for mid-sized freighters. They slipped through a gap in the perimeter fence. Lisa inhaled sharply when she saw multiple armed guards patrolling. Dom frowned at the sudden realization that these might not be legitimate spaceport authorities. Many uniform patches had a stylized D on the shoulder. Driak had indeed locked down the area. He turned to Lisa, pointing out the patrol patterns. By using the partial telepathic translator, they hashed out a plan. She would attempt to keep them off the guard's radar, perhaps by projecting mental static or illusions. Dom would handle any direct threat with minimal violence if possible. They moved carefully, ducking behind cargo containers and shield generators. Twice they had to flatten themselves against a wall to avoid a roving spotlight. As they crept around a hangar, they finally spotted the vessel, a small, sleek freighter with the name Solar Vanguard emblazoned on its hull. Dom recognized it as an older Alliance model, but well-maintained. The boarding ramp was down, and a single figure stood at its base. From this distance, Dom couldn't tell if it was Commander Harlow or someone else. Suddenly, a harsh voice crackled through a nearby loudspeaker. Attention, we have you surrounded. Surrender the Laserian or face immediate termination. Dom's stomach twisted. He and Lisa exchanged alarmed looks. Her eyes flared with panic. The translator spat out words that echoed her fear. Surrounded, no escape. Footsteps thundered on the metal floors of the docking bay, moving in from both sides. A line of corporate security guards, brandishing rifles, advanced methodically. Leading them was a tall man in an immaculate corporate suit, silver hair slicked back, eyes cold as a serpent's. He carried himself with an air of confidence, the sort of man used to controlling every outcome. Dom's heart sank as the man spoke. Major Dominic Reed, I presume. And the asset. His gaze flicked to Lisa without a shred of human empathy. You can call me Director Mercer. I represent Driak Enterprises. The Laserian is company property. Relinquish her now, or neither of you will leave this dock alive. Dom's jaw tightened. She's not property. Mercer's lip curled in distaste. So quaint, these Terran soldiers and their moral high ground. But you can't win. Look around you, Major. Dom glanced from left to right. Guards had them pinned, cutting off all routes. The boarding ramp to the freighter was a good 50 meters away, an impossible dash if they were riddled by gunfire. Lisa reached for Dom's arm, her eyes pleading. The translator flickered with random words. Trust. Power. Bond. Dom felt a surge of warmth in his chest, recalling the telepathic communion they had shared. She might still have a reserve of energy to break through the blockade, but at great risk. He gave a slight nod. If this was the only way, so be it. Mercer seemed amused by the silent exchange. There's no point resisting. Hand her over. We'll keep you alive if you cooperate. Dom glared. I'd rather die than hand her back to you. A sigh of faux regret escaped Mercer. Then die you shall. He gestured sharply, and the guards raised their rifles in unison. At that instant, Lisa closed her eyes and inhaled. A faint violet aura shimmered around her skin, growing brighter. Dom's hair stood on end. He recalled how she had short-circuited her restraints, how she had offered a glimpse of her telepathic might. Now, freed from the stifling influence of those black bands, her true potential rippled in the air. The guards fired a volley, but the shots impacted a glowing dome that sprang up around Dom and Lisa. The energy crackled, absorbing the blasts and sizzling with arcs of purple lightning. The strain was visible on Lisa's face, beads of sweat rolling down her temples. She swayed, but Dom caught her. Through the bond they had formed, he felt her urgency and determination. Move, she gasped telepathically. Dom didn't hesitate. Maintaining her shield, Lisa struggled forward, each step costing her a piece of her strength. Dom fired from behind the shimmering field, carefully aimed shots that forced the guards to duck or scatter. The advanced weaponry they carried sputtered uselessly against the barrier. With every second of sustained telekinetic defense, Lisa's aura flickered, threatening to collapse. They advanced halfway to the ship before the shield wavered, opening a gap that allowed a sniper's bolt to sear Dom's upper arm. He grunted in pain, staggering, but Lisa threw out another wave of mental force that sent several guards crashing into one another. Director Mercer cursed, shouting for reinforcements. Dom, clutching his singed arm, urged Lisa on. We're almost there. She nodded, but her expression was tight with agony. Her entire body shook, the violet aura flickering like a dying star. The final stretch to the ramp felt endless. Dom fired until his pistol clicked empty. Then he hurled the weapon at a guard who tried to charge them, knocking him off balance. Another guard aimed, but an invisible telepathic lash from Lisa sent him reeling. By the time they stumbled onto the freighter's ramp, the girl was barely conscious. The figure standing at the top turned out to be a woman with short-cropped dark hair, Commander Tessa Harlow. She grimaced at the sight of them, bruised and bloodied. Get inside now, she barked, slamming a fist on the control panel to retract the ramp. Dom collapsed to his knees, and Lisa slumped next to him, gasping. The last thing Dom saw, before the freighter's hatch sealed, was Director Mercer's furious face as more guards rushed in, too late to prevent their escape. Then the hull shut tight, and the engines roared. Inside the cramped cargo bay, Tessa kneeled beside them. "You really did it, Dom. Are you both alive?" He nodded, still panting. "We're alive. Let's get off this rock." Tessa hurried to the cockpit to complete takeoff procedures. The freighter shuddered, scraping the docking cradle as it lifted. Dom felt a rush of relief, so powerful it nearly undid him. He turned to check on Lisa. She had fainted, her breathing shallow, her skin clammy. "Stay with me," he whispered, cradling her. A crackle across their mental link told him she was still present, but exhausted. He couldn't begin to guess the toll that much telepathic power took on her body. The freighter lurched skyward, artificial gravity compensators kicking in. Dom heard Tessa's voice through the ship's intercom. "Brace yourselves. We'll have to punch through the blockade." A sudden barrage from the station's defense towers rattled the ship. Dom clutched Lisa tight. An alarm blared in the cockpit. He could just imagine Tessa cursing as she banked sharply, weaving around plasma bursts. The deck plates vibrated underfoot. Then, with a final burst of acceleration, they broke free of the atmosphere, star-dotted blackness surrounding them. Tessa whooped in triumph. Dom exhaled, tension draining out of him in a dizzying wave. He carried Lisa carefully to a bench strapped against the cargo hold wall, easing her down so she could rest. She stirred, eyelids fluttering. Dimly, he felt her consciousness brush his, sending a wave of comfort and reassurance. Even in her weakened state, she tried to console him. "Hey," he murmured, stroking a strand of white hair from her face. "We're safe. We're off-planet." She managed a faint smile, though her eyes remained closed. The door to the cockpit slid open, and Tessa appeared, a faint sheen of sweat on her forehead. "Made it. Plotting a course for the jump gate now. We should be clear once we hit FTL. You owe me one, Dom." He looked up, relief still etched into every line of his face. "I owe you more than one." "Thanks, Tessa." She waved a hand. "Thank me by explaining what the hell's going on. Driok's going ballistic over this." "Who is she?" Dom glanced down at Lisa. "Her name's Lisa. She's a Lazarian. Telepathic. Driok was trafficking her, or something worse." He sighed. "I couldn't let them take her." Tessa studied the unconscious alien woman, her gaze flicking to the faint violet aura still sparking around Lisa's hands. "Well, that's a story. Listen, I can get you to an Alliance sector, maybe somewhere you can petition for asylum. Driok's got a lot of clout, though. They'll try to claim she's company property." "She's not property," Dom growled, exasperation rising in his voice. "She's a living being." "Yeah," Tessa said softly. "She is." She turned, heading back to the cockpit. "Better get some rest. We'll have to do a jump soon, and the autopilot needs my oversight." She paused, throwing Dom a brief, sympathetic look. "You did the right thing, Dom. Sometimes that's all we can do." Alone now, he focused on tending Lisa. He found a small med kit in the cargo hold and bandaged his burned arm, wincing at the sting. Then he checked her for obvious wounds. Physically, she seemed mostly bruised and battered, but the real harm was her drained telepathic energy. She'd poured so much of it into shielding them that she could barely remain conscious. Eventually, she opened her eyes fully, scanning his face as though making sure he was alive and real. Through their tenuous bond, he sensed gratitude. She parted her lips, murmuring in that tinkling language of hers. The translator on his wrist beeped. "Safe now? Rest." He nodded, letting out a breathy laugh. "Yeah, safe for the moment." He helped her sit up slightly, offered her a water pouch from the kit. She drank in small sips, then leaned her head on his shoulder. He felt a swirl of emotion. Relief, empathy, a blossoming sense of connection that went beyond mere rescue. She was more than an alien he'd saved. Somehow, in the midst of gunfights and fear, they had forged a bond deeper than words could express. They stayed like that for a while, letting the steady hum of the ship's engines soothe them. As the freighter slipped into faster-than-light travel, the tensions of Port Valerian began to fade like a bad dream. Dom couldn't help wondering what awaited them on the other side of this starry expanse. How would Lisa find her people again? Would the Alliance intervene against a corporate giant like Driok? He didn't know. and the uncertainty gnawed at him. But he also felt strangely emboldened, as though their bond, this intangible thread linking their minds, made every risk worthwhile. Gradually, Lisa stirred and attempted to stand. He helped her up, steadying her. She touched her fingertips to his temple once more. The translator beeped. "Thank you for saving me, risking life. My world far, but we find a way." Her statement resonated with Dom. "We'll find a way," he agreed softly. "I promise." She studied him, then gently brushed aside his hair and placed her palm against the side of his head. A bloom of warmth spread through him again, but this time it was accompanied by a sense of closeness that defied logic. He caught glimpses of her longing for home, her memory of the silver forests. Then, deeper feelings emerged, her gratitude toward him, a sense of kinship, and a more personal emotion that made his heartbeat quicken. She might have been from another star, but there was a part of her that recognized his spirit. He flushed, uncertain how to respond. "Lisa," he murmured, "you don't have to." She silenced him with a small, trembling smile. Her mental voice, more coherent now that they'd grown accustomed to each other's minds, sounded in his head without needing the translator. "We are bonded. I see you. You see me." This truth settled over him. He thought of the life he'd led before, drifting through conflicts on remote worlds, never truly belonging anywhere. Now, with a simple act of compassion, he had not only saved a life, he had found a purpose in protecting it, and possibly something resembling a new path for both of them. A warmth kindled in his chest that had nothing to do with her telepathy. "Together," he said, letting the single word hold all the meaning he couldn't articulate. She nodded, and for the first time, he saw hope gleaming in her eyes like starlight. Several hours later, Dom stood in the cockpit with Tessa, who fiddled with the nav computer. Through the front viewport, hyperspace stretched as a shimmering tunnel of light. Tessa leaned back in her seat and eyed Dom with a mix of curiosity and amusement. "So, you and this Lisa, how does that even work?" He shrugged, glancing over his shoulder where Lisa rested on a small bench. "I have no idea," he admitted, "but I plan to see it through." Tessa snorted. "Last time we served together, you couldn't wait to get back to Earth. Now you're risking your neck for an alien you've known for a day. She must be special." "She is," Dom said simply. Tessa nodded, turning back to the console. "Well, I've sent out discreet feelers to some sympathetic alliance contacts. They might help arrange a formal hearing. If Lisa's some kind of VIP among her people, that could get the alliance to intervene. Driak wouldn't dare cross the alliance if the treaty is recognized." Dom arched a brow. "You're risking a lot, Tessa." She shrugged. "Sometimes you gotta do what's right. Besides, I owe you. You saved my life on that pirate station a year back. Consider this my way of evening the score." A faint smile touched Dom's lips. His eyes lingered on Lisa, who was quietly observing the swirling lights outside. "Thanks," he said softly. "I appreciate it. Don't get mushy on me," Tessa teased, though her tone was light. She flipped a switch, scanning for pursuit. No sign of Driak's ships in hyperspace. "We might actually make it." Dom left the cockpit and joined Lisa, sitting beside her. She offered him a questioning glance. Telepathic snippets formed in his mind. "Where do we go?" He considered the question. "We'll try to reach an alliance station, or maybe your people if we can figure out their coordinates. The translator only does so much, but maybe you can show me." She nodded, closing her eyes. This time, she lifted one hand to rest on his cheek, sending a gentle wave of mental images. Star charts, subtle differences in astral signatures, the approximate route from Nexus Prime to her homeworld. The detail wasn't perfect, but Dom's wrist computer recorded the telepathic feed. They might be able to align it with known star maps. It was still a shot in the dark, but better than nothing. A day passed in relative quiet, drifting through FTL. Tessa kept them on course, occasionally adjusting power levels to stay off any corporate surveillance that might detect them. Dom tended to Lisa's injuries and taught her a handful of Terran words, while she gradually imparted more of her language to him through telepathic nudges. They were halfway to an Alliance border station when Tessa appeared from the cockpit with a grave look. "We got a problem. Alliance Command says Driak has put out a sector-wide alert, labeling Lisa a stolen corporate experiment. They've offered a massive bounty for her return. Plenty of hunters might be waiting for us at the station." Dom tensed. "Then we go elsewhere. Can we jump straight to her home system?" Tessa shook her head. "Not without a verified NAV route. We might get lost in uncharted space or run headlong into an anomaly. We need star charts. The station is the best place for that, but it's risky." He traded a worried look with Lisa. She bit her lip, scanning his face anxiously. Through the translator, partial words came, "Danger at station. But we must find a way." Tessa took a steadying breath. "I'll try to hail some discreet contacts who might ensure we can dock safely. Worst case, we slip away undetected. We have enough fuel for 2 more jumps. After that, we're stuck." The next hours stretched taut. Dom felt dread building in his stomach at the thought of stepping off the ship and into another potential ambush. The memory of Port Valerian's gunfight lingered, and Lisa's telepathic shield was still not fully recharged. As they prepared for the final approach, he double-checked his sidearm and spare energy cells, just in case. When they dropped out of hyperspace near the Alliance station, a large ring structure orbiting a pale blue planet, Dom's nerves buzzed with tension. Tessa initiated docking protocols. The station's flight control responded with clipped orders, designating them to a lower-level hangar bay. She followed instructions, her expression tense. "Hold tight. If this goes south, we undock and run." The freighter glided into the hangar, docking clamps engaging with a metallic clang. Outside the viewport, uniformed station personnel moved about, fueling ships and directing traffic. Nothing seemed overtly hostile. Dom helped Lisa to her feet, and Tessa opened the hatch. The air had a processed sterility typical of Alliance facilities. 2 uniformed officers approached, a man and a woman, both with crisp salutes. "Commander Harlow." "Major Reed," the woman said. "Alliance Command informed us you might be bringing in a Lazerian asset." Her gaze lingered on Lisa with wary curiosity. Dom stiffened at the word asset, but Tessa spoke calmly. "She's not an asset. She's a sentient being requesting asylum. We have evidence that Driak forcibly detained her." The man nodded gravely. "Understood. We'll escort you to a secure area where the request can be processed." It seemed official, by the book. Dom hoped that was a good sign. The trio followed the officers through the corridors. Lisa pressed close to Dom, her eyes flicking nervously at every passing stranger. The station's interior smelled of recycled air and antiseptic floors. Overhead, lighting cast everything in a stark brightness. They reached an administrative office. A tall, stern-faced Alliance official greeted them. "Major Reed, Commander Harlow, and Miss Lisa, is that correct?" He glanced at each in turn. "I'm Overseer Column. I handle asylum requests on this station." He gestured for them to sit. Dom and Lisa took seats in front of Column's desk, while Tessa hovered protectively behind. Column tapped on a hollow screen, reading something presumably related to them. "Driak claims Miss Lisa is an experimental telepathic creation, belonging legally to them. You contest this. She belongs to no one," Dom said firmly. "Her species is from a planet outside Driak jurisdiction. She was kidnapped." Column nodded. "Then we need to confirm her origin. If she is indeed a free citizen of another recognized world, the Alliance can't let a corporation treat her as property. But if her species is unregistered, the legal complications grow." Lisa's eyes shifted to Dom. Through the telepathic translator, she murmured, "Show him our world." Dom paused. He worried about the risk of letting the station officials see too much. But if they withheld proof, Driak might spin any story they wanted. "Yes," he said softly, meeting her gaze. "Do it." She rose, taking a step closer to Column, who watched her warily. The black metallic desk separated them, but she lifted her hands, asking silent permission. Column hesitated, then nodded. Lisa placed her fingertips lightly on his temple. A faint purple glow enveloped them. Dom saw a flicker of surprise cross Column's face as Lisa imparted mental images, silver forests, the crystal spires of her capital city, her people's communal telepathic gatherings. He also glimpsed the moment of her capture, men wearing Driak insignias, sedation, the terror of confinement. When Lisa withdrew, Colum sagged in his seat, clearly overwhelmed. "My word," he whispered, blinking rapidly. "I saw it all. She's from a legitimate civilization. Driak kidnapped her. This is monstrous." Dom released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "So you'll grant her asylum?" Colum straightened, smoothing his uniform. "Under Alliance law, yes. I can issue temporary protected status while the matter goes to a formal hearing. Driak may contest it, but from what I've just seen, they have no legal claim." A glimmer of hope lit Lisa's face. Dom rested a hand on her shoulder. But just as relief was about to settle, an alarm blared throughout the station. Over the intercom, a voice shouted, "All security personnel to Hangar 12. Driak assault team inbound." Colum's eyes widened. "That's impossible. Driak can't openly attack an Alliance station." Tessa cursed under her breath. "They must be desperate." Dom jumped to his feet. "Get her somewhere safe." Colum fumbled with his desk controls. "I'll lock down the administrative zone. You two find cover in the safe room. Commander Harlow, if you can help station security, please do. This is an unprovoked assault." Tessa nodded. "Dom, keep Lisa safe. I'll handle these bastards." Dom clasped Tessa's arm. "Be careful." She gave him a tight-lipped smile and bolted out the door, already barking orders into her comm. Colum led Dom and Lisa through a rear corridor, scanning his biometrics to open a sealed hatch. The safe room was small, lined with metal walls. Dom ushered Lisa inside, glancing around for anything that might serve as a defense. A single bench, emergency supplies, no weapons. He clenched his fists. If Driak was mad enough to attack the station, they might break in here too. Lisa's telepathic energy was still fragile. A thunderous explosion rattled the walls. The station's artificial gravity flickered, making everyone stagger. Dom caught Lisa, steadying her. She locked eyes with him. "Fight again," her mental voice asked, tinged with exhaustion. Dom inhaled sharply. "If they get this far, we might have no choice." Footsteps pounded outside the corridor. Shouts echoed, followed by blaster fire. Colum fumbled with the safe room controls, trying to seal the door, but the panel sparked and died. "They've overridden the system," he hissed, eyes going wide with panic. Dom shoved Colum aside, pressing his ear to the metal. He heard a faint hum of cutting tools. "They're slicing through the door." He turned to Lisa. She was trembling, not from fear alone, but from weariness. They'd been running or fighting almost nonstop. Now the corporate assault threatened to ruin their hard-won steps toward asylum. "It's time," she said telepathically, her words echoing in Dom's mind with resignation. "I must do more. Full communion." He blinked, uncertain. "That's the deeper link, right? Are you sure you can handle that now?" She took his hands in hers, violet eyes shining with determination. "My strength can grow with yours. We join minds fully. A permanent bond." Dom's heart hammered. He'd known from earlier glimpses that among her species, such a mental and physical merging was a profound commitment. Yet the walls shook with the approach of Driak's men. They had no time for second thoughts. Slowly, he nodded. "Let's do it." She pressed her forehead to his, breathing shakily. A luminous purple aura enveloped them both, swirling with raw energy. Dom felt his consciousness plunge into a vast ocean of thoughts, memories, and emotions, both his and hers, merging into a single tapestry. He glimpsed her entire life, her childhood, wandering the silver forests, learning telepathy from the elders, her role as a cultural envoy meant to negotiate alliances. She saw his military career, his regrets and fears, the nights he spent haunted by guilt over lost comrades. In that shared space, they held each other's pain, offering solace and understanding beyond words. On the physical plane, Dom was dimly aware of a surge of power that coursed through Lisa. She rose to her feet, violet flames dancing across her fingertips. Her hair lifted as though by static. The walls glowed in reflection, and the safe room seemed to hum with energy. The door blew inward in a shower of sparks, revealing 3 armored Driak troopers brandishing rifles. Colum cried out, but Lisa, eyes shining like twin stars, lifted her hand. An invisible force slammed the troopers against the corridor walls, their weapons clattering to the floor. They groaned, pinned by telekinetic might. Another wave of her hand, and they dropped unconscious, the lights on their armor flickering out. Dom was at her side, his mind still resonating with hers, though he felt a sudden dizziness from the intensity. She steadied him, telepathically sharing a fraction of the cosmic swirl of energy. "It's done," she breathed. "They can't hurt us." Colum gaped, speechless. Dom took a shaky breath, urging them forward. "We need to help Tessa and the rest of the station." They stepped over the fallen troopers and into the corridor, just as more blasts sounded from the hangar area. Driak soldiers had forced a partial landing, it seemed, and were engaged in firefights with Alliance personnel. Explosions rocked the decks. Lisa led the way, her aura flaring whenever an enemy trooper appeared, knocking them aside with telepathic bursts that deflected blaster fire harmlessly against the walls. Dom, not wanting to leave everything to her mental powers, picked up a discarded rifle, providing covering fire. In minutes, they reached the hangar, where Tessa and a squad of Alliance security officers were pinned behind cargo crates, outgunned by a heavily armored Driak assault walker. The mechanical beast cannon spat purple bolts that kept the defenders cowering. Dom and Lisa darted behind another crate. Tessa spotted them, a flicker of relief crossing her face. "I could use some help," she yelled over the roar of gunfire. Dom fired at the walker, but the bolts bounced off its reinforced plating. Lisa squared her shoulders, summoning the last reserve of the communion's power. She raised both hands, and a searing lance of violet energy leapt from her palms, slamming into the walker's joints. Metal screeched and buckled. The walker's legs collapsed, toppling the machine with a thunderous crash. Tessa and her squad seized the moment, surging forward to capture or neutralize the remaining Driak soldiers. In the aftermath, smoke billowed through the hangar. Alarm klaxons hooped. Tessa jogged over, her face flushed from adrenaline and relief. "That was incredible. The station has never seen an attack like this. We're lucky you two were here." Colum arrived, panting, along with additional Alliance reinforcements. The holdouts from Driak were disarmed. The station's control resumed, though the cost and structural damage was high. Colum surveyed the destruction with a grim expression. "Driak has just declared open war on an Alliance facility. That's a new low. Alliance HQ will come down on them hard." Dom glanced at Lisa, who leaned against him for support. She looked utterly spent, the flames of her telepathic power subsiding. He wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "They won't be able to sweep this under the rug." Colum nodded firmly. "Not after my report. And after we present Miss Lisa's testimony regarding her abduction, the Alliance will have ample grounds to sanction Driak. They'll be forced to pay damages and renounce any claim on her." Lisa offered a tired, grateful smile. "Thank you," she managed both telepathically and through the translator. "Thank you all." Alliance medics arrived, tending to injuries. Dom refused further treatment until they took care of Lisa, who had pushed herself beyond limits. Under the gentle ministrations of station medics, she closed her eyes and drifted into a deep, healing sleep. Meanwhile, Dom lingered at her side. That sense of an unbreakable bond settled in his chest. The following days saw the station abuzz with official inquiries. Driak's assault forced the Alliance to intervene, with press coverage condemning the corporation's blatant aggression. Overseer Colum filed an emergency motion granting Lisa not just temporary asylum, but full protected status as a recognized diplomat from her homeworld, pending the official location of her people. The news spread quickly, turning Lisa from an unknown asset into a figure of sympathy, an alien victim of corporate greed. Dom found the bureaucracy tedious. He would have rather spent time teaching Lisa more Terran words and learning about her culture. Yet each new form and statement pushed them one step closer to real security. Tessa remained a constant ally, using her contact to speed up the process and ensure no Driox sympathizers sabotaged them. At last, the day came when Lisa was discharged from the med bay, her strength fully restored. Dom, leaning against the corridor wall, watched her emerge with that serene grace he'd grown to admire. She came to him, lacing her fingers through his, and pressed her forehead lightly against his, a gesture he understood to be deeply intimate in her culture. "We did it," he whispered, brushing a stray lock of white hair from her cheek. "You're safe here, and soon we'll find your home." She smiled, eyes reflecting 1,000 unspoken emotions. Together, when Tessa stepped out of a nearby office, she word her in. "Great news. The Alliance Council has arranged for a diplomatic escort to help you locate Lisa's planet. You'll be traveling on a diplomatic cruiser in about 2 days. They'll use the star maps Lisa provided through that telepathic interface. Once you're there, the Alliance can sign a formal treaty with her people if they're open to it." Lisa's face lit up. Dom's heart twisted at the thought that she might return home and no longer need him. Sensing his worry, she brushed her telepathic presence against him, reassuring him. "We stand as one now," her mental voice whispered. "My world will welcome you, as I do." He swallowed hard. "Then that's settled. I'm going with you." Tessa snorted. Never doubted it for a second. Overseer Column arrived to congratulate them, confirming all the paperwork was finalized. Lisa was officially recognized as a visiting diplomat. "The final hearing is a mere formality," Column explained. Driox's attempt to forcibly seize her doomed their credibility. Dom thanked him. The station had become a surreal place of calm after the battle. Debris was cleared, corridors repaired, and morale was high. Everyone felt they had struck a blow against corporate bullying. In a quiet moment, late that evening, Dom and Lisa found themselves in a viewing lounge on one of the station's higher levels. Through the transparent dome overhead, stars stretched infinitely, shimmering in the vast darkness. She leaned against him, feeling the rise and fall of his breath. Without words, they both understood how far they had come since that fateful moment when her capsule crashed to the ground in Port Valerian. Dom draped an arm around her shoulders. "It's crazy, you know," he murmured. "I was just a soldier on shore leave, looking for a drink, and I ended up saving a princess, well, a diplomat, and forging some kind of telepathic bond." She laughed softly, the musical lilt of her voice reflecting in his mind. "Sometimes destiny arrives in a humble capsule." He turned to face her. "Are you sure about this bond between us? That it's okay with your people?" She gazed at him with tenderness. "It is more than okay. In our culture, unity of minds with someone from another world is rare, but it signifies acceptance of deeper truths. My people will cherish the chance to learn from you, and for you to learn from us." He exhaled, feeling tension melt away. "Then I guess we have a lot to look forward to." Together, they watched the endless cosmos, hearts and minds intertwined. The journey that lay ahead was bound to be fraught with new challenges. Rescuing Lisa was only the beginning of a much larger struggle against corporate exploitation and bridging entire civilizations. But for the first time in a long while, Dominic Reed felt not just the duty of a soldier, but the spark of hope that came from genuine connection. In the distance, a star freighter slipped into hyperspace, its engines leaving a streak of light behind. Dom found himself reflecting on how everything had changed from one ordinary moment in a busy marketplace. He'd acted on instinct and compassion, and in doing so, had stumbled into a cause greater than any mission he'd undertaken before. He looked at Lisa, still by his side, still leaning against him with that quiet confidence. His world had expanded beyond measure, no longer confined to human battles and human grief. Now, it was bound up in the fate of a people he had never even known existed, in the eyes of a woman who had been caged as property. No, he corrected himself. Not just a woman, but a partner, a companion, bound to him by mind and spirit. He touched the side of her face, feeling warmth and telepathic resonance flow between them. She smiled, a silent affirmation echoing in his head. Tomorrow, They would board a diplomatic ship. They would chart a course across stars unmarked by Terran charts, following the memory of silver forests and violet skies. And if Drioc tried to stand in their way again, so be it. They'd proven that corporate greed could be outwitted, that unity could conquer fear. As the station's lights dimmed in a simulated dusk cycle, Dom and Lisa remained in that quiet vantage, marveling at the infinite black sea of stars. They needed no words. Their mutual heartbeat, the gentle rise and fall of breath, the subtle whisper of thoughts, they were enough. Everything that lay ahead seemed less daunting now that they shared this bond. Their future was not guaranteed, but it was theirs to shape, and they realized that alone was extraordinary. An alien girl's capsule had fallen off a merchant's wagon in a sun-scorched market, setting into motion events that would ripple across star systems. Sometimes the smallest accidents ignited the greatest changes, and though neither of them could possibly have predicted it, they wouldn't trade this new path for anything. They had found each other, found hope in the darkest corners of the galaxy, and together they would see just how far that hope could carry them.